Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Tourism and Hospitality Service Management, SOTHSM. Diploma in Tourism Studies, DTS. TS5 Ecology, Environment and Tourism. Block 1 Environment, an Introduction. Unit 2 Linkages in Nature. 2.1 Introduction. If you are asked to list 5 commonly discussed themes in present times, surely, environment would figure in your list. Environment means different things to different people and, accordingly, people interpret it in a variety of ways. In the previous unit you have seen an ecologist's definition of the environment. In whatever way you, we and others may describe the environment, all these descriptions directly or indirectly refer to the dynamic aspect of the nature. You may ask, what makes the environment dynamic? It is plethora of life forms that it encompasses. Further, the linkages between the innumerable life forms make the environment a dynamic entity. You may now ask, what are these linkages? Linkages refer to the relationships between the various components of the environment, and this is precisely what we are going to discuss in this unit. As we go on to explore the linkages in nature, always remember the concept of interdependence, and note that it is the underlying theme of all the ecological relationships. 2.2 The ecosystem. Try defining the environment and the nature. Do these descriptions overlap? Generally speaking, the environment and the nature seem inseparable. In fact, these words are often used as synonyms, and we shall continue to use them in this way in this unit too. The expanse of environment is very large and it covers the whole biosphere. Fig. 1. As you know, the environment includes numerous components. There are so many kinds and number of life forms, biotic factors, that stagger one's imagination. These living forms, forming the web of life, read out almost throughout the bios here from the earth, down, to the oceanic floor, and up even above the highest mountains in the air. In addition, there are equally diverse kinds of abiotic factors constituting the physical environment that create conditions suitable for life to exist. If we intend to make an ecological expedition to understand our environment, making use of all the efficient technological aids available to us, a lifetime would be too short a period for it. So what do we do? And you may also ask, then how come so much is known about our environment, covering the entire planet Earth? Well, what we know today about our environment is the result of studies of innumerable ecologists, naturalists and other scientists who have studied its different aspects, putting in lots of efforts and time, and even spending their entire life studying only a particular aspect. For the purpose of understanding the basic ecological principles of environment, first it is essential to identify an area which one would like to study. While doing so, we have to keep in mind 3 things: its accessibility, ease in handling and appropriate size. The whole biosphere, as a unit for study, is too large, and so are its 2 main components, the atmosphere and the earth. If we choose earth, then its subdivisions, the continents, are again too large. Their sub-subdivisions, forests, deserts and so on, also seem to be unwieldy. We continue to subdivide earth and select a small area such as an island, a pond or a grassland etc. for our study. The selected area, say an island, besides fulfilling the above 3 requirements, seems to be a manageable system to study the ecological principles and relationships in the nature. What is the crux of the above discussion? 1. The ecosystem is what we choose it to be. It can be the biosphere, earth, forests, rivers, ponds, islands, wheat field, an aquarium, a jar of pond water and even a rock with lichens growing on it. Ecosystem is, thus, a handy operational term that can be applied at any scale. In tourism, it is often applied in the context of a destination, i.e., the ecosystem of a destination. 2. There is an ecosystem within an ecosystem and yet another ecosystem within it. It is just like the dolls made of wood. As you open one, there is one in it, which in turn has another, and so on. The whole biosphere is an ecosystem, so are its components, the earth and the atmosphere, which in turn have smaller ecosystems. 3. The ecosystem is a unit of the nature that is in itself an independent functional entity. 4. The ecosystem is an intricate network consisting of biotic and abiotic factors, connected through complex interactions that arise between the biotic and abiotic components. 5. Ecosystems vary in complexity. 6. Despite the variations in different ecosystems, the underlying basic ecological principles and processes are similar. So far, we have dealt with 2 aspects of the ecosystem. The first is, what is an ecosystem? Second is, what constitutes it? The third, Fig. 1. Diagrammatic representation of biosphere giving a conceptual idea of its external aspect that needs to be looked into is that how does it work? 2.3 The components of ecosystem. We come back again to the example of the island ecosystem that we have identified here for the purpose of our study. From a distance the island appears lush green and full of life. There are tall trees, shrubs, herbs, rodents, birds, butterflies and many other life forms. The ground floor is wood with heaps of dead leaves, twigs and fallen branches. At a casual glance these appear to be lifeless, rotting masses. In addition to the wide range of biotic forms on the island, abiotic components such as soil, water, air and light too constitute an integral part of the island ecosystem. The complex interactions between these factors create conditions suitable for the existence of life. Both the biotic and the abiotic components together form the ecosystem. The living organisms require energy for their life processes and materials for the formation and maintenance of body structures. The energy and materials are obtained from food taken up by the organisms. All living beings in an ecosystem are related among themselves through food. Organisms are broadly divided into two categories viz. Producer and consumer. The green plants are producers, as they have the capacity to manufacture their own food from existing supply of water and carbon dioxide, utilizing sunlight as the source of energy. This process is known as photosynthesis. Not only big trees are efficient in this solar energy FHNG process, but diatoms, green algae and phytoplankton also produce food. Therefore, animals and most microorganisms, unlike plants, cannot capture energy from the sun as plants do. To obtain energy and nutrition they eat plants directly or feed on plants indirectly by eating other organisms. Therefore, animals and most microorganisms are consumers. Consumers may belong to one of the four classes on the basis of their food sources: 8 herbivores, 8 carnivores, omnivores, and 8 detritus feeders. A consumer that eats only plants is a herbivore, and the animals which prey on the animals are known as carnivores. A consumer that eats both plants and animals is an omnivore. Surely, you can generate a long list of examples for all these categories. In which category would you place yourself? Detritus feeders or decomposers feed on detritus, the dead or partially decomposed remains of plants and animals, and obtain both energy and nutrients from dead organic matter, helping in recirculation of the materials in the environment. Numerous kinds of bacteria, fungi, earthworms, termites and maggots are all examples of decomposers. 2.4 Food chain, food web and trophic level. The organisms belonging to different categories as described in the previous section are related to each other in terms of food. The energy-fixing green plants, producers, are eaten by herbivores, which in turn are eaten by carnivores or predators. Thus the living organisms are related through energy, forming a food chain, in other words, through eater and eaten relationship. The food chains are mostly sequential and begin from green plants followed by herbivores and two successive sets of carnivores or predators. Such food chains are called grazing food chain or predator food chain, Fig. 5a. In addition, the food chains that start from dead organic materials that are consumed by a series of parasites and hyperparasites is called detritus food chain or saprophytic food chain, Fig. 5b. These food chains are invariably linked to one another in nature, see Fig. 5c. Fig. 5a. Grazing food chain, b. Detritus food chain. Bacteria and other organisms fed on plant and animal remains. C. The grazing and detritus food chains are linked. Look at the screen. Let us consider a simple food chain consisting of 5 links, Fig. 4. The sequence is as follows: grass, grasshopper, frog, snake, vulture. Each sequence or link in the food chain is called a trophic level or food level, Fig. 6. The green plants make up the first trophic level and the herbivores make up the second trophic level, and the higher trophic levels, third, fourth and so on, are composed of carnivores. See the above food chain once again. The trophic level of an organism indicates its position with respect to the producers, that is, the green plants. Food chain, grass, grasshopper, frog, snake, vulture. Fig. 6, a trophic level diagram of the food chain. Look at the screen. A food chain is a flowchart that follows the course of food energy through an ecosystem. It is important to remember that energy flow through the ecosystem is unidirectional from lower trophic level to higher trophic level. Fig. 7. Energy flow through the food chain. Solar energy fixed by producers passes on from one TMPHIC level to another. Eventually the energy passes to the decomposers. Note that only a part of energy is transferred, represented here by different sizes of HTLERA, to the Nexel level, and a considerable portion is lost as heat. P. Producer. C. Consumers. Look at the screen. Let us have a look at the energy status at various levels of the food chain. See Fig. 7. As we go along the trophic levels, at each step, a large portion of energy is lost as heat and only a small fraction, about 10%, goes on to the next level. Therefore, the quantity of energy decreases successively at a rapid rate from primary producers to the top consumer. Carnivores. This explains why the food chains have fewer links. After fourth or fifth link, not enough energy is available to support another trophic level. Extending this concept a bit further, in case we want to support more human population on Earth, this could be possible by providing them with vegetarian diet rather than non-vegetarian food. This way maximum energy can be made available, as it involves one step in the energy transfer from primary producer, thus minimizing energy loss at subsequent transfers. Figure 8 is the conceptual model of the above discussion on energy flow. FLG 8. The use of vegetarian and carnivorous diet for supplying human population. If on a vegetarian diet 1500 kilograms of plant matter can support 25 people for the same length of line, shown in a LH80, 1500 kilograms of plant matter can support only one person who eats meat, as shown in B. The data given is hypothetical. Look at the screen. Also compare the following two food chains depicted in the trophic level diagram, Fig. 9. In the light of the above, could you tell which of the two food chains can support larger number of people? From the above discussion, you should not be tempted to believe that the food relations in an ecosystem are simple, having only linear food chains. Act as JLLY. In nearly all the natural ecosystems, the patterns of consumption are so complicated that there are many cross-links connecting various organisms. So when the consumers have more than one food source, this results in branching off of food chains. In this way, chains become interconnected to form a food web. Fig. 10. A food web, thus, a composite of all the food chains, giving us a complete picture of who consumes whom. IWKN ecosystem. Food webs represent transfer of energy and nutrients among the organized NLS through the ecosystem, whereas a food chain traces only one pathway or represents one strand of the food web. In a food web, many species can occupy more than one trophic level. They are known as multi-level consumers or omnivores. Humans are good examples of this situation. The humans, when they consume food derived from plants, they are primary consumers occupying second trophic level, and when they consume animal products, they may occupy third or higher trophic levels. 2.5 Interrelations and interdependence linkages in nature. The trophic relationships of an ecosystem can be summarized in the form of ecological pyramids. Fig. 12. The base of the pyramid represents the first trophic level, consisting of producers, and the rest constitute the consumers, while the apex represents the tertiary consumer. There are three kinds of ecological pyramids. Pyramid of numbers represent the number of organisms at each trophic level. Fig. 12a. The second is the pyramid of biomass. See Fig. 12b. Biomass is the dry weight of living matter at a particular time. To calculate the biomass of, say, the producers, it is necessary to collect and weigh the plants of a given area. The biomass of consumers can be determined by first counting the number of different typecies of animals. Then the total number is multiplied by the average weight per individual. That gives the approximate biomass at each trophic level. The third type is known as pyramid of energy, which illustrates the energy structure of ecosystem. See Fig. 12c. Less energy is available at each succeeding trophic level. Can you recall why is it so? Maybe you would like to refer to Fig. 7 once again. As you know, the producers constitute the base of the pyramid, and the various level of consumers form the top portion of the pyramid. The pyramidal shape reflects a balance amongst the various trophic levels in the ecosystem. The utility and relevance of studying ecological pyramids is illustrated by the three examples discussed below. Try to figure out what kind of ecological pyramid would result in each of the following situations. Forest. The number of herbivores such as deers, stags, rabbits 6 tc will increase, resulting in an imbalance of the entire ecosystem. Try to visualize the shape of the ecological pyramid to depict such a situation. Let us see another example. if large-scale deforestation is carried on. In any area, the herbivores which are dependent on green plants would either migrate to nearby areas or those unable to adapt or withstand such a change would perish. Deforestation, in one stroke, drastically alters the habitat and wipes out the food source of herbivores. This is one of the main reasons for the steady loss of endemic primate species which once flourished in the natural forests of our country. Similarly, in the croplands, which are man-made ecosystems, we are applying large amount of biocides, insecticides and pesticide to save our crops from pests and to get better yield. We pay a heavy price by using pesticide because their use over a period of time disturbs the ecological balance. How? In nature, the various kinds of insects are not unwanted creatures, but they have some specific roles to play. Some of them act as pollinators, as they carry pollen grains from one flower to another. By doing so, they affect fertilization and seed setting process. In crops and wild plant species, transfer of pollen from one flower to another by biotic agencies help in promoting much needed genetic reshuffling, which eventually helps in producing species and varieties with superior genetic makeup. Let us weigh the advantages and disadvantages of the use of biocides. There is one advantage, that it checks the pests. But disadvantages are many. Excessive biocides use, besides resulting in accumulation of biocides in the natural reservoirs, also wipes out many useful and non-target organisms acting as one pollinators. It is natural that seed set or yield will be greatly reduced in the absence of pollinators. Those of us who have an attitudinal closeness to the nature and care to understand the delicate relationships are careful of their choice of actions in such kinds of situations. Nowadays, the educated and environmentally conscious farmers too evaluate the cost and benefits of the use of these chemicals on the overall production of different crops. Vis-a-vis preserving the nature. 2.6 The linkages. After having studied the major ecosystem components and their linkages, let us view an ecosystem in totality. Try to visualize any natural ecosystem, lake, forest, or an island. One thing that you might have observed is that no organism lives in isolation. Each organism has linkages with other organisms existing in that ecosystem. All organisms inhabiting a given area constitute a community. Every organism in a community, whether it is a microorganism or macroorganism, is interdependent on each other directly or indirectly. In addition, each organism is also closely linked with their abiotic environment in a complex way. Let us see how. In order to remain alive, all organisms must secure energy and nutrients from their environment. The primary producers can be viewed as the port of entry for energy to the ecosystem. The solar energy is the ultimate source of energy for powering all the reactions in an ecosystem. By harnessing and storing the solar energy in the form of carbohydrates, the primary producers form a direct link between the abiotic and biotic components. Herbivores fulfill their energy needs in form of food from green plants and in turn serve as energy source. For carnivores, energy transfer sequence through the food chain and food web provides strong linkages for interconnecting living organisms in the ecosystem. The energy obtained by each of these organisms is not utilized 100%. If its reverse was true, then how would the web of life go on? Only a fraction of this energy is utilized and it is leaked and dissipated into the environment in the form of heat. This represents an important linkage between biotic to abiotic components. The metabolic wastes and dead organic matter provides another major linkage between biotic and abiotic components. The story of linkage does not end here. Bacteria, fungi, worms and other decomposers fulfill their energy requirements for their life processes from dead organic matter. In this process, the undesirable wastes are processed and broken into their elementary elements, such as carbon, oxygen, nitrogen. Helps in renewing the supply of nutrients for the use of green plants to the environment. This represents another biotic-abiotic linkage. The nutrients absorbed by green plants once again move into another cyclic journey. The diverse kinds of interwoven linkages between the biotic abiotic components are vitally important for the functional integrity of ecosystems. In addition, water, which is a crucial factor for existence of life, is also made available continually through water cycle, which is again powered by the sun. Thus, there is an equilibrium between the physical and biological elements in terms of nutrients and energy. This state is also called natural equilibrium, a term we very often come across when dealing with problems of ecology and environmental protection. We all must, thus, understand these basics of existence on this planet, lest we may unknowingly make choices which would provide a setback to all these processes and eventually the life on this planet. 2.7 Tourism industries attempt to relate to nature. Tourism is gaining importance amongst the various human activities in the modern world. So much so that today, the tourism industry is fast emerging as a major economic force both at national as well as at the international level. You may be wondering why we are suddenly talking on the entirely different issue. Well, this is the central theme of this course, which we begin to directly discuss with you from now on. The environmental basics that you have studied so far should set you to start analyzing the activities of tourism industry vis-a-vis the environment. After all, what tourism is about? Tourism is an umbrella term for all the relationships and phenomena associated with public traveling and visiting different parts of the country, world with certain specific objectives. Tourism involves two key interactive components, the tourists and the environment. However benign the objectives of a tourist may be, it does exert certain amount of pressure on the local environment. How? Imagine, a small group of tourists visits and spends a number of days in a certain area, with a simple aim to watch the beautiful landscape and the wildlife. The bare minimum tourists' needs, accommodation, transport facilities and service infrastructure need to be taken care of. All these activities along with the behavior of tourists do exert certain pressure on the environment. Our attempt, therefore, should be to anticipate such likely pressures and leave enough scope for the environment to recover and regain the original status after the tourists moved out from that site. You should realize that this should not remain at the philosophical level only, but it should generate a deep environmental concern in you. The interaction between tourism and environment should be viewed as an important consideration in designing conservation and protection of the delicate balance of the nature. When we say so, it does not mean that for the first time any attention is being paid to this aspect. People associated with the tourism enterprises have felt some of these problems in the past, and many tourist impact studies have been conducted. Such studies have highlighted the adverse consequences of tourism-related activities on the environment. The damage levels were recorded, but the processes by which damage occurs have been rarely identified. Another weakness of such investigations is that usually a single environmental component of a tourist spot has been examined, ignoring the relationships and interdependencies of the components for taking a comprehensive view of the total environment. In nutshell, most of these studies are reactionary, that is, after the event analysis. The following 5 examples would bring out this point very clearly to you. These examples, taken from different situations, sum up the adverse after effects of some tourism-related activities and are based on substantial data, which we have not deliberately included here. The use of off-road vehicles and sensitive ecosystems such as dunes is damaging. Wildlife observation by tourists disturbs the feeding and breeding of animals and birds. Waste discarded by tourists at sites visited get accumulated in huge amounts over the years. In some places, situation has come to a pass where it is posing grave danger to the very existence of that area as a tourist spot. In the seaside tourist resorts, the untreated raw sewage from the tourist accommodation is discharged into the sea, thereby adversely affecting the marine lion communities existing on shores and nearby areas. Excursions and carelessly conducted educational trips involve uprooting and collection of rare or important plants by tourists and trampling of vegetation, resulting in avoidable loss of biodiversity. There is no dearth of impressively documented examples conveying the same message. All these remain locked in books, papers or technical journals only. In future too, many such instances may add on to the existing list to make it even longer. Since tourism is almost certain to become a major sector in international trade in the years to come, a central review of the impact of tourism on environment is urgently required. 2.8 Let us sum up. In this unit you have studied that the environment consists of biotic and abiotic components 6 that are interrelated in an ecosystem. The ultimate source of energy for all ecosystems is the sun. The producers are capable of trapping the sun's energy and converting it into biomass. Herbivores feed on producers and are in turn eaten by carnivores, which may be eaten by other carnivores, constituting the food chain. The starting point of grazing food chains is always a producer, followed by a series of consumers, each of which feeds on the latter. Detritus food chains begin with dead organic matter that is consumed by decomposers, like bacteria, fungi, as well as various soil animals. Each level in the food chain is known as a trophic level. Ecosystems generally have a relatively large producer base with successively smaller numbers of herbivores, carnivores, and top carnivores. Energy flows through an ecosystem. Trophic levels, food chains and food webs track the flow of energy. Each time energy passes from one trophic level to the next, about 90% of the energy is lost and only 10% is incorporated into the body tissues of organisms of the next higher trophic level. A biotic community represents interacting populations of organisms in an area. The organisms are interrelated in a variety of ways through interlocking food chains forming a food web. Because of this interlocking, changes in one part of the community can have system-wide effect. The trophic relations in an ecosystem can also be represented in the form of pyramids, of number, biomass or energy. All the biotic and abiotic components are linked to each other in an intricate manner. It is important to understand the linkages in the nature to avoid disruption of the nature. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next video, with next chapter.